The day I found out about it was the day everything changed. The day I became someone I didn't recognize. It started as a regular morning. I was in the kitchen, stirring the pot of jollof rice that was meant to be our Sunday meal, when I heard his voice in the living room. I didn't think much of it at first. Kunal, my husband, always had a way of talking loud, especially when he was excited about something. But this time, his voice sounded different. It was strained, almost panicked. I wiped my hands on my apron and walked into the living room, only to see Kunal with his phone pressed to his ear, his face pale, and his hands shaking. He was speaking in hushed tones, but I could make out bits of his conversation. No, I told you everything is under control. No one can know. Yes, I'll handle it. Just get it done. I froze. This was unusual. Kunal was a confident man. He never stuttered or sounded so unsure. My heart raced as I approached him. Kunal, what's going on? I asked, trying to sound casual, but the worry in my voice was undeniable. He quickly dropped his phone into his pocket, but it was too late. His face had already betrayed him. I knew something was wrong. He turned to me, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Nothing, just business stuff, babe. You know how it is, he said, but his voice lacked the usual confidence. I knew my husband. I knew when he was lying, and something about this was off, way off. Business? In the middle of the night. I crossed my arms, raising an eyebrow. What's really going on? Kunal let out a deep sigh, running his hand through his hair. Okay, fine. There's something I need to tell you, but I don't know how to say it. I felt my stomach tighten, the air between us growing heavy. Tell me what? I pushed, my voice rising slightly. He took a step towards me, his expression serious now. There's something I've been hiding. Something that could ruin everything for us. My heart skipped a beat. What was he talking about? I tried to keep my voice steady, though the fear and uncertainty started to creep in. Kunal, what are you talking about? I repeated, my hands now trembling. He hesitated, looking away as though gathering the courage to speak the truth. And when he finally did, it hit me like a thunderbolt. Kunal paused, his words getting caught in his throat. I'm being blackmailed. I stared at him, blinking. The words didn't make sense. Blackmailed? For what? I asked, my mind spinning. He swallowed hard. They have something on me. Something I did a long time ago. And now they're threatening to expose me unless I pay them. I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. This wasn't what I was expecting. I had always believed Kunal was a good man. Strong, capable, dependable. But this was something else entirely. Who is doing this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. I can't say, but they've already taken things from me. Things that could destroy everything we've worked for. I took a step back, trying to process what he had just said. The image of my husband, the man I thought I knew, shattered in an instant. My thoughts raced, questions flooding my mind. What was he hiding? What had he done? And why hadn't he told me sooner? I felt a mix of anger and betrayal burning inside me. I wanted to scream at him, demand answers. But instead, I stood there, frozen in place. The silence stretched out, thick and suffocating. Finally, I spoke, my voice barely audible. You've been lying to me this whole time? Kunal's face twisted in guilt. I never meant for it to go this far. But now it's too late. I'm stuck, and there's nothing I can do. Before I could say another word, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out quickly, his eyes flickering with panic as he read the message. Then, without warning, he turned towards the door. Kunal, where are you going? I asked, my voice rising in panic. I have to go. I have to fix this, he said, not even looking at me as he rushed out of the house. The door slammed behind him, leaving me alone with my thoughts and my fears. The feeling of betrayal and confusion swallowed me whole. I didn't know what Connell had gotten himself into, but I knew one thing for sure: nothing would ever be the same. Welcome to Stories by Anif. Thank you so much for your incredible support. Your likes, comments, and shares mean the world to us. Before we dive into today's heart-wrenching story, please subscribe to this channel, turn on the notification bell, and drop a comment below. Let us know where you're watching from. Are you tuning in from Lagos, New York, London, or somewhere else? We love connecting with our global family. The hours stretched into what felt like days after Connell left. I couldn't focus on anything, my mind too tangled with questions, doubts, and that suffocating feeling of betrayal. Every corner of our home felt different, as if the walls themselves knew that something was terribly wrong. The jollof rice sat on the stove, untouched, while I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the wall in a trance. What had my husband done? What was he hiding? And why had he felt the need to keep it from me for so long? These questions gnawed at me, chipping away at the trust one thought I'd built over the years. I reached for my phone and dialed his number, but it went straight to voicemail. Of course it did. He wasn't going to pick up. Connell always ran from his problems, never facing them head-on. I sighed, frustration rising in my chest. It wasn't like him to act this way, so distant, so full of secrets. My phone buzzed in my hand, breaking my thoughts. It was a text message from an unknown number. Your husband is in too deep. If you want him back, you'll have to play the game. The words sent a chill down my spine. I didn't know who was behind the message, but the tone was clear. Whoever this was, they wanted something from me. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. How had they gotten my number? How did they know about Connell? Panic surged in me, but I quickly shoved it down. I wasn't going to be scared. Not yet. I needed answers. And there was only one person I knew who could help me find them. My sister, Chioma. She was always the level-headed one, the one who could see things clearly when I was lost in a storm of emotions. I quickly called her up. Chioma, I need you, I said when she picked up. Something's going on with Connell. I think he's in trouble. He's been hiding something from me. And now I think it's worse than I ever imagined. There was a long pause on the other end, followed by a deep sigh. Calm down, sis, Chioma said, her voice soothing. Start from the beginning. What exactly happened? I took a deep breath and recounted the events of the morning. How Connell had been panicked, how he confessed to being blackmailed, and then left without saying much. I told her about the strange text message I'd received. When I finished, Chioma's voice was calm, but there was a sharpness to it now. This doesn't sound good. You need to be careful, Ngozi. Whoever this is, they're not playing around. I know, I said, my throat tight, but I need to know the truth. I need to understand why Connell is in this mess. Chioma paused again. Listen, I know someone who might be able to help. He's a friend of mine, works in security. I'll send you his number. You need to get to the bottom of this before things get out of hand. I thanked her quickly and hung up. I didn't waste another second before texting the number Chioma had sent me. The message read, I need help. My husband is being blackmailed. Please, I need to know everything. Minutes felt like hours as I waited for a response. Finally, the phone buzzed. I know about Connell. Meet me at the usual place in 2 hours. Bring no one. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. The usual place? What did that even mean? 2 hours later, I found myself in the parking lot of a small, dimly lit cafe in the heart of Lagos. The air was thick with the scent of fresh pepper soup and grilled suya from nearby food vendors. I didn't recognize the place, but I wasn't here for the ambience. I was here for answers. I spotted the man Chioma had referred to, standing near the entrance, his eyes scanning the crowd. He was tall, dressed in a simple black t-shirt and jeans, blending in with the evening crowd. When he saw me, he nodded and motioned for me to approach. Are you Ngozi? He asked, his voice deep and low. Yes, I answered, my heart racing. I'm here about Kunnel. He didn't waste time. We don't have much time. Let's talk inside. We sat down at a small table near the back of the cafe, away from prying eyes. He leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. I know why Kunnel is being blackmailed, he said, glancing around nervously. But you won't like what I'm about to tell you. I stared at him, my hands clenched tightly on the table. Tell me. I need to know everything. He hesitated for a moment, then spoke the words that would change everything. Kunnel owes them a lot of money, more than you can imagine. And this isn't just about him, it's about you too. You're in danger, Ngozi. They know who you are. They know everything. I froze, feeling the blood drain from my face. What do you mean? They know who I am. They know you're the president's daughter. The room felt like it was spinning. Couldn't breathe. What did he just say? I wasn't just Kunnel's wife. I wasn't just Ngozi from the quiet neighborhood in Lagos. I was the president's daughter? How was that even possible? The weight of this new revelation hung heavy in the air, suffocating me. The life I thought I knew was a lie, and I was stuck in the middle of a nightmare I never saw coming. I sat there, stunned, unable to process the words the stranger had just dropped on me. The president's daughter? My voice was barely above a whisper as I stared at him, the world around me blurring. The man across from me didn't seem to notice my shock. Instead, he leaned back, his eyes scanning the room cautiously. Yes, he said again, his tone firm. Kunnel's mess. It's bigger than you think. You were always meant to stay in the shadows, but they know who you are now, and they'll use that to control him. I felt a cold sweat form on my forehead. But I didn't. I paused, swallowing hard. I didn't grow up like that. I'm not involved in any of that stuff. He nodded slowly, as if he'd expected my reaction. I know, but blood doesn't lie. And now, the people who have Kunnel are looking for leverage, and they've found it. You're the key to everything. I looked at him, trying to make sense of what he was saying. My mind was still spinning from the revelation, but I couldn't afford to lose focus. I had to figure out what was really happening. So, what do? I asked, my voice stronger now, despite the growing fear in my chest. How do I stop this? The man studied me for a moment, his face unreadable. You need to go back to Kunnel. Find out who he owes the money to, because whoever these people are, they're not just blackmailing him. They're using him to get to something much bigger. How do I even get close to him? He won't pick up his phone. He's disappeared, and I don't even know who I can trust right now. I felt the frustration welling up inside me. The man across from me wasn't offering any easy solutions. He leaned in again, his voice dropping even lower. You have to be careful, Ngozi. Don't trust anyone who offers help too easily. They'll either want something from you or worse, they're part of the game. Kunnel might have gotten involved with dangerous people. People who don't play by the rules. I sat back in my chair, the weight of his words pressing on me. I had never asked for any of this. I was just a woman, trying to live her life with her husband and kids, far from the world of politics and power that had been kept from me. But now everything was falling apart. I leaned forward. I need to get to Kunnel. I need him to tell me everything. I can't keep living in the dark. He owes something to someone, and I have to fix it. Fix us. The man looked at me for a long moment, as if measuring my resolve. Then he gave a slight nod. All right, but you need to be smart. Don't let your emotions take control. Find out who's pulling the strings. Only then can you help Kunnel, and only then will you understand how deep this thing goes. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. Where do I start? I asked, feeling the urgency in my chest. The man handed me a card. Go here. It's a place Kunnel used to go to when he was trying to hide from his past. You'll find someone who knows more. I took the card without hesitation, slipping it into my bag. As I left the cafe, I could feel the weight of my mission pressing down on me. The world I thought I knew was crumbling before my eyes. I wasn't just trying to save my marriage anymore. I was about to step into a world I wasn't prepared for, and there was no turning back. The streets of Lagos were as bustling as ever. People shouted out in the markets, cars honked, and street vendors peddled everything from roasted plantains to fresh fish. But as I walked through the crowds, I felt out of place. I was no longer just Ngozi from the neighborhood. Now I was a woman on a mission, driven by fear, by anger, and by the undeniable pull of my bloodline. I had to find Kunal. I didn't know what awaited me, but one thing was clear. I couldn't trust anyone except myself. The next few hours felt like an eternity as I made my way to the location on the card. A small, inconspicuous building stood at the corner of a street, hidden behind a row of shops. I looked around before entering, my instincts telling me to be cautious. I wasn't sure what I was walking into, but I had no choice but to go forward. Inside, the dim light from a single bulb overhead barely illuminated the room. A man sat behind a desk, his eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. He didn't even look up when I walked in. "You're here for Kunal," he said flatly. I nodded, my throat dry. "Yes, I need to know everything. Where is he? Who is behind all this?" The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You're treading in dangerous waters, lady. Kunal owes a lot more than money. You're in this now, whether you like it or not." I slammed my hand down on the table, frustration bubbling up. "I don't care about that. I just want to know what's going on and how to fix this." He finally looked at me, his gaze cold and calculating. "You want to fix this? Then you'll need to go to the very heart of the problem. But be warned, it's not going to be pretty. There are people who don't play fair, and they'll do whatever it takes to get what they want." I clenched my fists, determination surging through me. "I'm ready." The man leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing. "All right, I'll help you. But remember this. If you're not careful, you'll lose everything." The room grew quieter, the weight of the man's words hanging heavy between us. I had already lost so much, but I wasn't going to lose Kunal, not without a fight. The man's words echoed in my mind as I left the dimly lit room. "If you're not careful, you'll lose everything." I didn't know if he meant Kunal, my family, or myself, but one thing was certain. Whatever I was getting into, it wasn't going to be easy. I stepped back out into the busy streets of Lagos, trying to steady my breath. The sounds of the city surrounded me. The honking of taxis, the chatter of street vendors, the occasional rattle of a bus. But none of it seemed to reach me. My mind was consumed by the mess Kunal had created. I had so many questions now. Who were these people he owed money to? What were they really after? Why hadn't he trusted me enough to tell me the truth? It didn't make sense. Kunal and I had always shared everything, or so I thought. But now I was in a world I didn't recognize. I clutched the card from the man tightly in my hand as I made my way to the location he had given me. I was on a mission, and I wasn't about to turn back. Couldn't. The place I arrived at was nothing like the flashy buildings I was used to in Lagos. It was a rundown warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The kind of place where shady deals probably happened every day. I hesitated for a moment before pushing the rusty door open and stepping inside. The air was thick with dust and the smell of old wood. A single light bulb hung overhead, casting long shadows across the room. In the far corner, a man stood, his back turned to me. He didn't acknowledge my presence, but I knew he was waiting for me. I took a step forward, my heart pounding in my chest. "I'm here about Kunal." He turned slowly, his face hard, like he had seen too many people like me come and go. He was tall, built like someone who could handle himself in a fight. His gaze swept over me, and then he spoke, his voice low and rough. "I know why you're here, but you should turn back now. This isn't a game, lady." I stood my ground. "I'm not leaving until I find out what's going on. Where is Kunal? What does this have to do with me?" The man narrowed his eyes. You don't know what you're dealing with. Kunnal's mess isn't just about money. It's bigger than you think. You're caught up in this because of who you are. I frowned. Who I am? He chuckled darkly, his eyes never leaving mine. You don't know? Kunnal didn't just get himself into debt with anyone. He's tangled up with people who have a lot of power and a lot to lose. And now you're part of their game. I felt a chill run down my spine. What game? What are you talking about? He stepped forward, his eyes searching mine as if weighing how much to tell me. There are things about your family that you don't know. Kunnal got involved with the wrong people because they know what you are, a tool, a pawn in their bigger plan. My breath caught in my throat. What do you mean, a pawn? I don't understand. He sighed, running a hand through his short hair. You're the key, lady. Your family, your bloodline, it's not just a coincidence. They've been watching you, waiting for the right moment. I could feel my stomach twist with fear. This wasn't just about Kunnal anymore. There were bigger forces at play. Forces I had no control over. Who are they? I demanded, my voice trembling. I can't tell you everything, he said, his eyes flickering with unease. But I can tell you this, if you want Kunnal back, you have to be willing to play the game. And it's a dangerous one. One you might not come back from. I felt my chest tighten. This wasn't the kind of thing I had bargained for. I had just wanted to fix my marriage. Now, I was tangled in a web of secrets and lies, unsure of who to trust. Tell me what I need to do, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. I'll do whatever it takes. He studied me for a moment before speaking again. There's a meeting tomorrow, place where they'll be. If you want to know more, that's where you'll get the answers. He handed me a crumpled piece of paper with an address written on it. Go there, but be careful. Trust no one. I didn't wait for him to say anything else before turning and walking out. The cool evening air hit me like a slap in the face, but it didn't ease the weight on my chest. I had a meeting to attend tomorrow, but I wasn't sure I was ready for what was waiting for me. As I drove back home, my mind raced. Who were these people? And why was my family's bloodline so important to them? I didn't know the answers, but I knew one thing. I was about to step into a world where trust meant nothing and betrayal lurked behind every corner. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything I'd learned. I thought about Kunnal. What had he gotten us into? And more importantly, how was I going to get him out? The next day came too quickly, and before I knew it, I was standing in front of the address written on the crumpled piece of paper. My heart was pounding in my chest as I took a deep breath and pushed open the door. I had no idea what to expect. The room was quiet, too quiet. Shadows danced on the walls as I stepped inside, my senses on high alert. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. But when I looked around, there was no one there. It was as if I had walked into an empty room, but I knew better. Someone was waiting for me. The silence hung in the air, thick and oppressive. I was about to uncover something that could change everything if I could survive it. The room felt colder than it should have, and the silence, oh, the silence was suffocating. My heart was pounding so loudly in my chest that I was sure the people in the shadows could hear it. I slowly closed the door behind me, my fingers trembling as I gripped the handle. The address on the crumpled piece of paper had led me to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Lagos, far away from the hustle and bustle of the city. The only thing that remained of its former life were the faded signs and the eerie echoes bouncing off the cracked walls. It was the perfect place for secrets to be kept. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know who would be waiting for me, but something told me that whatever it was, it wouldn't be easy. Hello, I called out softly, my voice barely above a whisper. I scanned the dark corners of the room, my eyes straining to make out shapes in the dim light. The place smelled of old wood, dust, and something more sinister, like secrets buried long ago. A movement caught my eye. Out of the shadows stepped a figure. His face was partially hidden, but I could tell he was tall and well-built, his presence imposing. He wore a dark suit, the kind that didn't scream luxury but whispered authority. He was someone used to being in control. "You're here," he said, his voice calm, almost too calm. "I was beginning to wonder if you'd show up." I held my ground, refusing to let fear control me. "I'm here for answers. Where's Connell? And who are you?" The man gave a slight smirk, his eyes gleaming in the half-light. "I think we should talk first, don't you? I'm not in the habit of handing out answers so easily." He motioned to a nearby chair, and without thinking, I sat down. What else was I supposed to do? I was already too far in to back out now. "So, you're the president's daughter," he said, as though the words meant little to him. "I must admit, I didn't expect you to show up like this, but here we are. I'm impressed." His words made my stomach churn. "What does that have to do with anything? I don't care about politics or your games. I just want to find Connell." He chuckled darkly, folding his arms across his chest. "You think you're in control of this? You think you know what's going on? You're a pawn, Ngozi. You've always been a pawn." I felt a wave of anger rise up inside me. "Stop playing games with me. Tell me what you want. I'm done with the lies." His gaze hardened. "Lies? You want the truth? Fine. The truth is, Connell owes a debt that goes beyond money. There are forces at play here, forces that you don't understand." I leaned forward, my pulse racing. "Who are they? Who is Connell working with?" The man didn't respond immediately. He stepped closer, his face inches from mine. "Your father, he's at the center of this. Connell's debt is connected to a much bigger plan. You see, your family's bloodline holds power, power that others would kill to control." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What are you talking about? What power?" The man gave me a pointed look, as if trying to gauge how much I really knew. "Your father's presidency is just the surface of it. There's a whole underground network, and Connell got involved with people who want to take that power for themselves. And you, Ngozi, you're the key to all of it." The air around me grew heavier with every word he spoke. "I don't understand. What do they want with me?" He smiled coldly, revealing a hint of satisfaction. "They want to use you, of course. Connell was just the beginning. Now, they'll use your connection to your father to make their move. And there's nothing you can do to stop it." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had never imagined that something like this was possible. My entire life had been turned upside down in a matter of hours. "You're lying?" I spat, standing up abruptly. "I won't let anyone use me. I won't be part of their scheme." The man raised his hands in mock surrender. "I'm not asking you to join them. I'm telling you that you're already in it, whether you like it or not. You've been marked, Ngozi, and now you have two choices." I stared at him, my body tense, my mind racing. "What choices?" "First," he said slowly, "you can play their game. You can become a part of their world, help them achieve their goal, and keep your family safe. Or second," he paused, letting the silence hang in the air like a threat, "you can refuse and watch as everything crumbles around you. Connell, your father, your family, everything. The choice is yours." The weight of his words pressed down on me, suffocating me with the enormity of the decision I had to make. There was no easy way out of this. I turned away, trying to steady my breath. "What do I have to do?" The man's smile widened, and I knew that whatever came next, it would cost me more than I was ready to pay. I left the warehouse with the man's words still echoing in my head. Play their game or lose everything. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't ready to sacrifice everything I held dear just to survive. But one thing was clear, no matter what happened next, I had to save Connell. He was in too deep, and I couldn't let him drown alone. But as I stepped back into the streets of Lagos, I realized something else. I wasn't just fighting for Connell anymore. I was fighting for my family, my legacy, and the truth. And whatever it took, I was going to uncover it, no matter the cost. I didn't know who was pulling the strings or what their game was, but I was about to find out. And no matter how dangerous it was, I wasn't going to let them win. I spent the night pacing back and forth in my small living room, unable to rest. My mind replayed everything that man had said. Play their game or lose everything. His words were like a constant drumbeat in my ears. The weight of it all was too much for me to handle, but there was no turning back now. Connell, my husband, the man I thought I knew, was tangled up in something far deeper than I could have ever imagined. The debts he owed weren't just financial, they were tied to something much more dangerous. Something that had my family's name written all over it. I rubbed my temples, trying to focus, trying to make sense of the chaos. But every time I thought I could see a way forward, something else pulled me in another direction. The feeling of being trapped was overwhelming. I had to make a decision, and quickly. The next day came too soon, but I couldn't waste any more time. I needed to confront Connell. I needed answers. I couldn't let him stay hidden in whatever mess he had made. He owed me that much. I called him again, but once again the phone went straight to voicemail. I clenched my jaw in frustration. He had been avoiding me ever since the morning I found out about the blackmail, and now this, whatever game he was playing, he wasn't going to win. Just then, my phone buzzed, interrupting my thoughts. A message from an unknown number. Meet me at the location. Come alone. I knew immediately that it was connected to the shady dealings I'd been thrust into. The game was still on, and they were setting the pieces into place. But what did they want from me this time? I had no choice but to follow the instructions. If there was even a chance of finding Connell or getting closer to the truth, I had to take it. I grabbed my bag, threw on a simple dress, and made my way out of the house, my mind racing. The place was another rundown building, tucked away in the heart of Lagos. It was almost like they wanted to keep everything out of sight. The area was desolate, with only a few people walking the streets, keeping to themselves. I felt like I was being watched from the moment I stepped onto the street. The location was a deserted garage, and as I approached, I could hear voices coming from inside. I took a deep breath before pushing the door open, my heart hammering in my chest. Inside, the room was dim, the only light coming from a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. There were a few men standing around, and in the center I saw him, the same man from the warehouse. "You're early," he said, looking me up and down. "Good." I didn't respond. Couldn't. My mind was still reeling from everything that had happened over the past few days. But I needed to stay focused. I needed to get the answers I was looking for. "Where's Connell?" I demanded, stepping closer. "What do you want with him?" The man smirked, stepping forward to meet me. "Connell? He's just the pawn. He's already done his part, and now it's your turn." I frowned, confusion clouding my thoughts. "My turn? What are you talking about?" He motioned to one of the men standing in the corner, who stepped forward and handed me a thick envelope. "This is for you. Consider it your entry ticket to the game." I hesitated but opened the envelope. Inside there were pictures of Connell, my family, and me. Some were taken from a distance, others more intimate. It was like they had been watching us for a long time. "What is this?" I demanded, my voice shaking now. "Why are you showing me this?" The man's eyes darkened as he stepped closer. "This is leverage. This is how we control people like Connell. And now it's your turn. You're part of this whether you like it or not." I stepped back, a sick feeling rising in my throat. "No, I refuse to be part of this. I won't let you use me." The man smiled grimly, his expression cold. "You don't have a choice. You're already in. And if you try to run, if you try to leave this game, things will get much worse for you. For your family. For Connell." I shook my head, tears welling in my eyes. "What do you want me to do?" He motioned for another man, who handed me a phone. "You'll get your next instructions soon. Don't make the mistake of crossing us." I stared at the phone in my hands, the weight of the situation finally sinking in. I was in too deep, and there was no way out now. If I didn't play their game, everything would come crashing down. Not just for Connell, but for me, for my father, and for everyone I loved. You have your role, the man said, his voice hard and final. Do what we say and we'll let Connell go. Refuse, and you'll regret it. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I couldn't lose control. I had to outsmart them. I had to protect my family. I walked out of the building with the phone in hand, my mind already racing with plans. The game was on, and I wasn't going to let them win. Not without a fight. The weight of the phone in my hand felt like a ticking time bomb. I had no idea what would happen next, but I knew one thing for sure. Whatever they had planned, I wasn't going to let them control me. I was going to take back the power. But first, I needed to find Connell. I needed to make sure he was still alive. The walls were closing in, and the game was getting more dangerous by the minute. But I wasn't about to give up. Not now. Not when everything was on the line. I walked the streets of Lagos in a haze, the weight of the phone in my hand a constant reminder of the trap I had just stepped into. Each step felt heavier, like the world around me was closing in, tightening its grip. I had no choice but to keep moving forward, even if I didn't know where I was headed. The game, as they called it, had begun. The rules were simple: do what they say or everything I held dear would come crashing down. And if there was one thing I knew, it was that I couldn't trust a single word they said. But for now, I had no choice. I had to play along, at least until I figured out how to outsmart them. The phone buzzed in my hand, interrupting my thoughts. My heart skipped a beat as I quickly unlocked it. Meet us at the old docks. Come alone. Bring the envelope. I stared at the message for a moment, my heart racing. The old docks? That was a place I knew all too well. It was a desolate area on the outskirts of the city, where shady deals went down, where people vanished without a trace. It was a place where no one asked questions and no one cared who you were. I took a deep breath and shoved the phone into my bag. There was no time to waste. I had to go. The ride to the docks was long, the city's noise and chaos slowly fading as I entered the more desolate parts of Lagos. The sun had begun to set, casting an eerie orange glow across the water, and the once bustling docks now felt like a forgotten ghost town. My stomach twisted as I drove past abandoned warehouses and rusted machinery. When I finally arrived, I parked a little distance away, trying to keep out of sight. I couldn't risk being seen. There was no telling who else might be watching. I grabbed the envelope, my heart pounding in my chest, and made my way down to the docks. The wind kicked up, carrying the salty air of the ocean with it. My footsteps echoed against the empty spaces as I walked toward a lone figure standing by the water. It was the same man, the one from the warehouse. His cold eyes followed me as I approached, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. "You're here," he said, his tone almost approving. "But you're late." I said nothing. There was no point in arguing. I had to be careful. "Where's Connell?" I demanded again, this time with more force. "What do you want from me?" The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a step forward, his gaze hard. "Do you really think you have any control in this situation, Ngozi?" he asked, his voice low. "You're not in charge here. You never were." I clenched my fists, trying to hold back the rage building inside me. "I want Connell, and I want to know what this is all about." He smirked, his eyes gleaming with something dark. "Connell's role is done. Now it's yours. It's time to see if you have what it takes." I felt a cold chill in my chest. "What do you mean by that?" My voice shook with uncertainty. He pulled something from his jacket pocket and tossed it onto the ground in front of me. "A flash drive. This is your first task," he said. "Take it. Deliver it to the address on the back. It's that simple." I glanced down at the small device. "What's on it?" "That's for you to find out." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You do this, and maybe Connell will come back to you. Fail, and you'll wish you never set foot on this dock." I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the flash drive, slipping it into my bag. The sense of dread deepened in my chest. This wasn't just about saving Connell anymore. This was about survival. And if I didn't play their game, I was going to lose everything. Go, the man ordered, pointing in the direction of the docks. Do what you were told, and we'll talk again soon. I turned and walked away, the weight of the flash drive in my bag like a leaden anchor. My mind raced. What was on it? What did they want me to do with it? But I couldn't waste time thinking about that now. I had to get to the address, wherever it was, and do whatever they asked. I climbed back into the car and drove off, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The weight of what was at stake hung over me, and I knew the stakes were higher than ever before. I arrived at a rundown building just as the last light of day was fading from the sky. The address on the flash drive was an old office block on the edge of the city. It looked abandoned, the windows dark and empty, the building crumbling in on itself. My heart pounded as I approached the door. The world felt like it was closing in, but I couldn't stop now. I stepped inside, the sound of my footsteps the only noise in the stillness. I made my way down the narrow hallway, the air stale and heavy with dust. The place felt like a tomb, each step taking me closer to the unknown. I reached a door at the end of the hall. It was slightly ajar, as if they were waiting for me. I took a deep breath and pushed it open. Inside, there was a desk, but no one was sitting behind it. Instead, there was a computer screen flashing in front of me, waiting for me to plug in the flash drive. I hesitated, but only for a second. I knew there was no turning back. I inserted the flash drive, the screen flickering for a moment before the file opened. The first thing I saw was a set of images of Connell, but not just any images. These were images of him meeting with people I didn't recognize, people who looked dangerous. The truth was slowly revealing itself, and with each passing second, I felt the ground beneath me slipping further away. I wasn't just fighting to save Connell anymore. I was fighting to survive in a world that was darker than I could have ever imagined. The computer screen flickered again as I scrolled through the images on the flash drive. My eyes couldn't process the horror fast enough. Connell's face, my husband, was staring back at me, but he wasn't alone. There were other men around him, all dressed in dark suits, their faces masked with an air of power and danger that sent a chill straight down my spine. I squinted at the images, feeling like I was seeing a side of Connell that I never knew existed. One picture showed him in a secluded meeting, shaking hands with a man I didn't recognize. The other images showed him leaving a building, looking nervous, like he was afraid of being followed. I had to stop, couldn't breathe. This wasn't the Connell I knew. The man I married was supposed to be honest, dependable, and good-hearted. But this wasn't just a mistake. This was a whole other life I had no idea about. And now, somehow, I was tangled in it all. I gripped the edge of the desk, trying to steady my racing heart. No, I couldn't let myself fall apart now. Not when I was so close to finding out the truth. I had to keep it together for Connell's sake, for my own sake. I clicked on the next file, a video this time. The video opened with a grainy image of a man sitting at a table, his face obscured by shadows. He was speaking, but the voice was muffled, and the audio wasn't clear. As I leaned in closer, straining to hear, a chill ran down my spine. "I know what you want," the shadowed figure was saying. "But it's not just about money anymore. Connell's involvement has made this personal. You're in too deep now." My breath caught in my throat. Connell. The man in the video was talking about him. My hands shook as I watched, trying to catch every word, every hint of what was going on. The voice continued, but the words became clearer. "The daughter of the president is the key. She's the one we need. We'll use her to get what we want." I felt the blood drain from my face. My knees went weak, and I had to brace myself against the desk. The daughter of the president. They were talking about me. I wasn't just some ordinary woman caught in a messy situation. I was part of their plan. and they would use me, manipulate me to get whatever it was they were after. The video ended abruptly, and I sat there in stunned silence. Everything I had known, everything I had trusted about my life and my marriage, was unraveling before my eyes. But there was still so much I didn't understand. Why me? What did they want from me? And why had Connell kept me in the dark? I had no answers, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let them control me. Not without a fight. I stood up from the desk, my legs shaky as I grabbed the flash drive and shoved it into my bag. I couldn't stay here much longer. It felt like the walls were closing in, the danger growing with every passing second. I needed to get back to the house, figure out my next move. But as I turned to leave, I heard a sound. Footsteps. I froze. Someone was coming. I ducked behind the door, my heart hammering in my chest. I wasn't sure who it was, but I couldn't risk being seen. Not now. Not after everything I had learned. I peeked around the corner of the door and saw a figure enter the room. It was a man, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black jacket. His face was partially obscured by a hood, but I could tell he wasn't here for casual business. He was here for something much more serious. I held my breath, trying to stay hidden, but as he stepped closer, he glanced up at the screen. His eyes locked onto the images of Connell, and I saw the recognition in his gaze. He knew who I was. I couldn't stay here any longer. I needed to leave. Now, I slowly backed away, making sure my footsteps were silent. I crept toward the door, then stepped out into the hallway, my heart still racing. I barely made it out of the building before the man shouted from inside. "Hey! Stop right there!" I broke into a run, not looking back. I couldn't risk being caught. Not now. Not when I was so close to the truth. I didn't stop running until I was back in the car, breathless and trembling. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as I started the engine and sped off. My mind a blur of thoughts and emotions. My body felt like it was on autopilot, moving without any real thought. I had to go home. I had to confront Connell. I had to make him tell me everything. But as I pulled onto the highway, a sinking feeling settled in my stomach. I wasn't the only one looking for answers. I wasn't the only one who had been watching. Whoever was behind this, whoever had set this trap, wasn't going to let me walk away unscathed. I had stepped into a world where I didn't know the rules, and now it was too late to turn back. The walls were closing in on me. I didn't know who to trust, and the danger was growing by the second. But one thing was certain. I wasn't going to let them win. Not without a fight. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? The images from the flash drive kept flashing before my eyes, each one more horrifying than the last. Connell, my husband, the man I had spent years with, was tied up in something far darker than I could have ever imagined. But it wasn't just about Connell anymore. They were after me. My bloodline, my connection to the president, made me a target. I couldn't stop thinking about the man from the docks, the one who had warned me of the dangers I was facing. He'd been clear. I was a pawn, caught in a game I didn't understand. But I refused to believe that. I had to find a way out, a way to take control back from these people who thought they could manipulate me. I got up early the next morning, my mind made up. I was going to confront Connell. I had to. He knew something. And if I could get him to talk, maybe, just maybe, I could start piecing together the full picture. But as I prepared to leave, my phone buzzed again. This time, the message was different. "I know what you're trying to do. Meet me. Alone." The message sent a jolt of fear through me. It was from a number I didn't recognize. My gut told me it wasn't a coincidence. Someone else was watching. Someone else who knew everything. I looked around, suddenly unsure of who I could trust. But I didn't have much of a choice. The message was clear. I had to go. I arrived at the location, a small cafe in a quiet part of town, the kind of place where no one would pay attention to what was going on. I walked in, my eyes scanning the room, trying to find the person who had sent the message. The place was nearly empty, save for a few people sitting in the corners, lost in their own conversations. Then I saw him. He was sitting at the back, wearing a dark jacket, his face partially obscured by a cap. When he saw me, he motioned for me to come over. I took a deep breath and made my way to his table. He didn't say anything at first, just watched me closely as I sat down. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he slid an envelope across the table. I hesitated before taking it, feeling the weight of it in my hands. "This will help you understand what you're really up against," he said, his voice low and measured. I opened the envelope and pulled out a series of documents. There were papers detailing the people Connell had been meeting with, names, locations, and dates. But there was something else, too. A map with several marked locations in Lagos, each one highlighted in red. I looked up at the man, my heart racing. "What is this? What does this mean? You don't know the full extent of what's happening here, do you?" he asked, his eyes narrowing. "Connell isn't just in debt. He's involved in something much bigger. These people aren't just after money. They're after power, and they'll do anything to get it." I swallowed hard, trying to process his words. "What power are you talking about?" The man leaned in, his voice dropping even lower. "The kind of power that controls everything in this city. Connell was just a pawn in their game. But you," he paused, looking me in the eye, "you're the real prize." I shook my head, confusion filling me. "What do you mean, I'm the real prize? I don't understand." He sighed, sitting back in his chair. "You're not just the daughter of the president. You're more than that. Your family's name holds weight, but there's a bigger secret at play. Your bloodline has ties to something that goes beyond the presidency. There are people who have been waiting for the right time to take control, and they've been using Connell to get to you." I felt a lump form in my throat. My father had always kept his political life separate from our family life. But if what this man was saying was true, then everything I thought I knew was a lie. "Who are these people?" I whispered. "They call themselves the Syndicate," he said, his voice tight with anger. "They've been pulling strings behind the scenes for years, manipulating governments, businesses, and even families. They've been waiting for someone like you to come along. A person of influence, someone they can use to get what they want." I felt the weight of his words settle heavily in my chest. This wasn't just about Connell. It wasn't even just about me. It was about something much bigger, and I had unknowingly become a part of it. "Why are you helping me?" I asked, my voice shaky. "What do you want?" He looked at me for a long moment, as if weighing whether or not to trust me. Finally, he spoke. "Because I want to bring them down. I've been watching them for years, and I've seen what they're capable of. But I can't do it alone. I need someone who knows the system, someone who has access to the people they've been manipulating." I stared at him, trying to make sense of everything. "So you want me to help you take them down?" He nodded. "Yes, but it won't be easy. They won't go down without a fight. And if we're going to succeed, you need to trust me. Trust me enough to follow the map. Follow the locations marked on it. They'll lead you to the answers you need." I felt my mind spinning, unsure of what to do. This man, whoever he was, seemed to know more about what was going on than anyone else. But could I really trust him? Before I could say anything, he added, "If you want to save Connell, if you want to save your family, you need to take this seriously. You're already in their game, but you can still change the rules." I left the cafe with more questions than answers, but one thing was clear. I couldn't trust Connell anymore. He had kept me in the dark for far too long, and now I had to face the truth on my own. But I wasn't alone in this fight. I had an ally, someone who knew how to navigate the dangerous waters I was now swimming in. And if I could use this map to uncover the truth, maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to turn the tables on these people. But the stakes were higher than ever. There was no turning back now. I didn't know who I could trust or how deep the rabbit hole went, But one thing was for certain. The game was about to get a lot more dangerous. The days blurred together as I followed the map, each marked location leading me deeper into the heart of the mystery surrounding Kunnel, the Syndicate, and my own family. Every step I took felt like a dangerous gamble. I didn't know who to trust anymore, and the weight of the secrets I was uncovering seemed to grow heavier with each passing moment. I had visited the first few locations on the map, a mix of abandoned buildings, empty warehouses, and rundown offices, but nothing had prepared me for the final destination. The last marker was the most unsettling of all. A grand estate in the outskirts of Lagos, surrounded by high walls and guarded by private security. This was it, the heart of the Syndicate. I pulled up to the gates, my hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. My stomach churned with a mix of fear and determination. I didn't know what I'd find once I stepped inside, but I had no choice. I was too far in now. I showed the guard at the gate the invitation I had been given, and after a tense moment of scrutiny, he opened the gate and waved me through. The estate was more extravagant than anything I had ever seen, a sharp contrast to the crumbling buildings I had passed earlier. It felt like walking into a world of secrets and power, one that I didn't fully understand. As I drove up the long, winding driveway, the house came into view. A large, imposing structure with tall columns and a manicured lawn. Everything about it screamed wealth and control, but underneath it all, I could feel the tension in the air. This wasn't just a home, it was a fortress, a place where the rules of society didn't apply. I parked near the entrance and stepped out of the car, my heart pounding in my chest. The door to the estate was already open, and standing there was a familiar face. It was the man from the cafe, the one who had given me the map. He was standing in the doorway, waiting for me with a cold smile on his face. His eyes flickered with something that resembled approval as I approached. "You made it," he said, stepping aside to let me in. "I thought you'd back out. Most people would." "I didn't come this far to back out now," I replied, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. He nodded, clearly impressed, and motioned for me to follow him inside. The air inside the estate was cool, almost sterile, and the atmosphere felt oppressive, like something was about to break. The walls were lined with expensive art, and the floors were polished marble, reflecting the dim light from the chandeliers above. "Why bring me here?" I asked, my voice echoing in the vast hallway. "What do you want from me?" He stopped in front of a large door, his hand hovering over the handle. "What I want," he said slowly, "is to make sure you understand just how deep this goes. The Syndicate has its fingers in everything. Your family, Kunnel, they've all played their part. But it's you, Ngozi, who holds the final piece." I felt a chill run down my spine. "The final piece?" He nodded, his expression unreadable. "You're the key to everything. And until you understand that, none of this will make sense." He opened the door, and I stepped inside, only to freeze at the sight in front of me. At the center of the room stood a large table, and around it sat several men. Men I recognized from the photos on the flash drive. These were the people Kunnel had been meeting with. The faces of power, the ones who controlled everything. And sitting at the head of the table was someone I had never expected to see. It was my father, the president. My breath caught in my throat as I stood frozen in place. My father, the man I had always known as a figure of authority, a symbol of power and integrity, was sitting at the head of a table surrounded by the very people I had been warned about. I couldn't believe my eyes. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What is my father doing here?" The man who had brought me into the room turned to me, his face now cold and serious. "This is the Syndicate, Ngozi. Your father has been a part of this world for years. He's been playing his part just like everyone else. But now you're here to make a choice. You're the one they've been waiting for." I stepped back, the shock too much to handle. "No. This can't be true. My father would never." "You don't understand," the man interrupted, his voice harsh. Your father is the one who brought you into this. He's the reason they've been watching you. He's the reason Connell is in so deep. He's the one who put this all in motion. I turned to my father, the confusion and anger boiling over. Why? Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you warn me about this? My father looked at me with a cold, emotionless expression. Because you weren't supposed to be involved, Ngozi. This world was never meant for you. But now that you're here, you have a choice to make. You can help us, help me, and we can control everything. Or you can walk away and watch everything fall apart. Tears blurred my vision, but I fought to keep my composure. I don't know who you are anymore, I whispered, my voice breaking. You're not the man I thought you were. You're not my father. The room fell silent as I turned away, the weight of the revelation sinking in. The family I thought I knew, the life I had built. All of it was a lie. I was part of something much bigger than I had ever imagined. And now I had to make a choice. The walls had closed in on me. I was standing in the eye of a storm, and the only question left was which side I would choose. The Syndicate had played their game, but so had I. Now it was time to make the final move. The room felt like it was closing in around me. The faces at the table, my father included, stared at me with eyes that seemed to judge and weigh my every move. The weight of the decision I was about to make pressed heavily on my chest, suffocating me. The world I thought I knew was a lie, and the people I trusted most had betrayed me in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. I looked around the room, my eyes darting from the cold, calculating faces of the men who ran the Syndicate to my father, who sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. He was the man I had once looked up to, the man who had been my rock, my protector. But now, in this moment, I realized he had been hiding secrets, dark, dangerous secrets, from me for years. I turned away from the table, my hands shaking. How long? I asked, my voice hoarse, barely able to hold back the tears that threatened to fall. How long have you been involved with them, Dad? How long have you been lying to me? There was a moment of silence before my father spoke, his voice cold and steady. It wasn't a lie, Ngozi. It was necessity. You don't understand the stakes. I did what I had to do to protect this country, to protect our family. This is bigger than you or me. I felt the anger rise inside me. Protect us? You've put us all in danger. Connell, me, the entire country. How could you think this was the right choice? How could you keep me in the dark about all of this? My father's eyes flickered for a moment, a flash of something, regret, perhaps, crossing his face. But it was gone before I could fully register it. I did what was necessary, he said again, his tone unwavering. You think I want to drag you into this? No, but I didn't have a choice. And neither do you. I turned to face him, my heart pounding in my chest. I have a choice, and I'm not going to be part of this. I'm not going to let you use me to get what you want. A heavy silence filled the room. The men at the table exchanged looks, their eyes narrowing as if trying to figure out how to play the game now that I had made my stance clear. The man who had been my supposed ally, the one who had given me the map and the instructions, stood up and walked toward me. You don't understand, Ngozi, he said, his voice low and dangerous. You've already been pulled into this. You think you can just walk away? You think you can refuse to play and everything will go back to normal? No, you don't get to leave. I stepped back, my hands held out in a defensive gesture. I won't be your pawn. I won't let you control me or my family any longer. The man's eyes flashed with anger, but before he could respond, my father spoke again. It's too late for that. You're already in. And if you refuse to cooperate, there will be consequences. For you, for Connell, for everything you care about. I felt the walls around me closing in, the reality of what was happening sinking in. I was caught in a web of lies, betrayal, and manipulation. And no matter what choice I made, there would be consequences. But I wouldn't let them win. I turned to face my father, my voice firm, steady, and full of resolve. You've made your choice, Dad, but I'm making mine now, and I'm going to expose everything. I won't be a part of your game. The room seemed to hold its breath. No one spoke for a long moment, and I could feel the weight of their glares on me. But I stood tall, not backing down. This was my moment to fight for what was right, to take control of my own destiny. Then, without warning, I pulled out the flash drive, the one that had started it all, and slammed it onto the table. You think I don't know how deep this runs? You think I don't know what you've been doing behind closed doors? I said, my voice rising. This is your last chance. You either stop or I expose everything. I will make sure the world knows the truth about the Syndicate. About you. My father's gaze darkened, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of fear in his eyes. It was only a flicker, but it was enough to tell me that I had finally reached him. He knew I wasn't bluffing. The man who had been watching me for so long stepped forward, his face filled with fury. You think you can take us down? You have no idea what you're up against. The Syndicate is untouchable. You've underestimated me, I said, my voice steady as I looked at my father. And now you've underestimated your own daughter. There was a long silence. Then my father slowly stood up from the table, his face unreadable. He walked toward me, his expression tight. I held my breath, unsure of what would happen next. Finally, he spoke. You have no idea what you're asking for, Ngozi. The power we hold, it's not just about money. It's about control. And you want to bring that down? You want to challenge it? I nodded. Yes, I'm not going to let you destroy everything for the sake of your power. I'm taking back control. My father's gaze softened for a moment. Just a moment. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. I can protect you. I can protect your family. No, I said firmly. You've already made your choice. Now, I'm making mine. There was a tense silence before my father finally spoke again. His voice lower now, almost regretful. Then it's done. You've chosen your path. And I can't protect you anymore. For a moment, I thought he was going to walk away. But then, he turned to face the men around the table, his voice growing stronger. If you want to fight her, you'll have to go through me. The men at the table looked at each other, unsure of what to do next. The power that had held them all together, the power they thought they had over me, was slipping away. My father's words had changed the course of the game. For the first time, I saw that the Syndicate was no longer invincible. They had underestimated me. They had underestimated my will to fight. I had made my choice. And now, I would make sure they knew just how powerful one person could be when they refused to be controlled. The tension in the room was thick, almost tangible. It was as if the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for the final move to be made. The men at the table, my father included, seemed to sense that something had shifted. The power that had been in their hands, the control they'd been so sure of, was slipping away. But it wasn't just slipping away, it was crashing down, and I was standing right in the middle of it. My heart pounded in my chest as I faced my father and the Syndicate. For so long, I had been living in the shadow of their influence, unaware of the lies they had built around me. But now the truth was out. The game had changed, and I wasn't just a pawn anymore. I was the one calling the shots. You've chosen your side, Ngozi, my father said, his voice heavy with something I couldn't quite place. Regret? Anger? Whatever it was, it didn't matter anymore. But you have no idea what you're up against. I met his gaze, steady and unwavering. I know exactly what I'm up against, Dad. And I'm not afraid. The Syndicate men exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the shift in the air. My father's power, once untouchable, was now a fragile thing. And I could see that they didn't know what to do with me. They had underestimated me, and that would be their downfall. Enough talking, one of the men said abruptly, standing up from the table. His hands were clenched at his sides, his expression tight with fury. "We're not going to sit here and let her destroy everything we've worked for." I glanced at him, unfazed. "You've already destroyed it. You just didn't realize it yet." The man took a step toward me, but before he could make another move, my father raised his hand, stopping him. The look he gave me was a mixture of disbelief and something deeper, something that almost resembled pride. But he didn't say a word. He just let the moment hang in the air. "You want to fight this?" The man snarled at me, his voice filled with venom. "Fine. But don't think for a second that you'll come out on top." I took a slow breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Everything was leading to this, a final showdown where I would either rise above it all or fall into the same trap they had set for me. "I'm not fighting for power," I said, my voice steady but fierce. "I'm fighting for the truth, for justice, and for Connell." The room grew silent. My father's gaze softened ever so slightly, like he was seeing me for the first time. He had always seen me as his daughter, the one to carry on his legacy. But now I wasn't just that. I was something more. I had the strength to make my own choices. And in this moment, I was choosing to stand up to the system that had manipulated all of us. "You think you can expose all of us?" the man hissed. "You think the world will just listen to your little story?" I stood taller, the fire in my chest burning brighter. "The truth always comes out, no matter how hard you try to hide it. And when it does, it won't just be my voice you hear. It'll be the voice of everyone you've tried to destroy." Suddenly, there was movement behind me. I turned to see the door open, and in stepped a familiar face. Connell. His eyes locked with mine, and in that moment, everything shifted. Connell had been lost in the darkness, tangled in the Syndicate's web. But now he was here. He had come back to stand by my side. "I'm done running," he said, his voice rough but resolute. "I'm done being a part of this." The men around the table were visibly shaken, and my father's expression hardened again. "Connell, you've made your choice," he said, his tone cold. "But don't think you can walk away from this unscathed." Connell stood firm, his shoulders squared. "I'm not walking away from anything. I'm standing with my wife, and I'm fighting for what's right." My heart swelled with pride. Connell had finally broken free from the chains the Syndicate had wrapped around him. Together, we were a force they couldn't control. Together, we would expose the truth. The room was filled with tension as I watched my father and the men of the Syndicate. They had built their empire on lies, deception, and manipulation. But they had never expected us to stand up to them. And in that moment, we were taking back everything they had tried to steal from us. Our lives, our choices, and our dignity. I looked at Connell, our eyes meeting in silent understanding. We had both been through hell, but now we had a chance to turn everything around. "You've lost," I said, my voice steady but filled with certainty. "This game is over. The truth will come out, and when it does, you'll all fall." My father stood up slowly, his expression unreadable. For a moment, it seemed like he might say something, some last plea to make me understand. But he didn't. He just nodded, almost imperceptibly, as if acknowledging that he had lost control. The men around the table stood, their faces filled with anger and frustration. But they knew. The power they had held over us was gone. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just about Connell. This wasn't even just about me. It was about justice. It was about reclaiming what was ours, no matter the cost. The Syndicate had played their game, but they hadn't counted on me playing mine. As I walked out of the room, side by side with Connell, I felt a sense of finality settle in my chest. The battle had been hard, and the road ahead was uncertain. But for the first time, I felt free. Free from the lies. Free from the chains that had bound us. Free to live the life we were meant to live. The truth had won. And no matter what came next, I knew we would face it together. Stronger, wiser, and unstoppable, If you watched this story to this end, thank you so much for your incredible support. Your likes, comments, and shares mean the world to us. Before we dive into today's heart-wrenching story, please subscribe to this channel, turn on the notification bell, and drop a comment below. Let us know where you're watching from. Are you tuning in from Lagos, New York, London, or somewhere else? We love connecting with our global family.